Welcome, everybody. Today is 10/31/23, and we are reasoning from the scriptures with Doug. So we're going to get to another topic today. Today's topic I want to discuss is, why are we lost in the first place? What is lost? Is there bad news that we need to talk about before we talk about the good news? Let's get right to it. So what is lost? We just want to go over some of the reasons. Now, I know a lot of people understand the fact that what we call original sin, and they are very familiar. If you say, oh, it's because of what happened in Adam, they will readily understand where you're coming from. It's not a mystery. However, I don't think that many make proper applications to what happened in the beginning. You'll see what I mean. I guess we need to understand what I mean by make proper applications to that. Let's just get to some of the thoughts here. Before salvation by grace is rejected, the bad news is rejected first. So think about this thought. We know there's bad news, but if we don't believe, trust in what God has told us about ourselves, he can't fix what he needs to fix about us so that we can be saved. We need God to weigh in on who we are so that there's reason as to why we're lost. And then we understand that reason, and then we can look to God and his solutions to fix it. So the first thought, I want to go to Romans 5. This is the first one. We're going to do a quick survey of what it says. Now, 5:12, therefore, just as sin entered the world through one man, and death through sin, and in this way, death came to all people because all sin. This is where we get the idea of original sin. Adam did it for us. He put us in this situation. Now, there's a couple of thoughts here. To be sure, sin was in the world before the law was given. So sin was first, before there was any law. And what law are we talking about here? We're talking about the Mosaic law. But sin is not charged to anyone's account where there is no law. What do you mean charged to anyone's account? I thought none of our sins were charged to our account. They were charged to Christ. Well, what are we talking about here? We're talking about death, and spiritual death with its resulting physical death. And then he says it right here. Nevertheless, death reigned from the time of Adam to the time of Moses, right? So this is to say, even over, well, let's let the verse say it, even over those who did not sin by breaking a command as Adam did, who is the pattern of the one to come. So this is an important scripture to help us understand this whole context. Because of what happened to Adam, not only do we all inherit these things, but we all receive the same penalty Adam received, even though the people between Adam and Moses didn't know that they were breaking a command. Like Adam was confronted. God told Adam, don't eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. If you do, these are the consequences. And Adam, fully knowing what he was doing, ate, and the consequences were leveled upon him, and not just upon him, but by all of us, because all sin. We were not all even there, but because of what happened in Adam, all of us are part of that. So this part is just saying there was no law during the time between Adam and Moses, but people still died, right? They died spiritually with resulting physical death. Although the lifespans were a lot different, they were a lot longer, even over those who did not sin by breaking the command. So they didn't do the same thing Adam did. God didn't confront them, but because they were in Adam, they received the same thing Adam received when he sinned. As did they didn't break a command like Adam did, but they still, nevertheless, death reigned. It ruled over all of them. And even though you could say, okay, did they know better? Did they not know better? No, death continued. So the results from Adam's sin reign. So this is foundational when we think of this. Now, I'm going to go to a couple other verses, and these verses, Romans 5:17 through 19. And we're going to cover those because we're talking about not only what happened and when we talk about the original sin, but why and what are the results and what are we facing now that we're talking bad news has happened, right? Sin entered the world through one man. So let's look at some 3 clear results. Now, there are other verses that we could consider, but I'm going to go in summary. These 3 verses say it all. We're going to start with 5:17. For if by the trespass of the one man, notice who's that one man in context? We know it's Adam, right? We know Adam did all this, right? So by the trespass of the one man, death reigned through that one man. We just read that, so we know that what we're talking about. But he's not going and trying to show you where the law has any culpability. It doesn't matter about culpability. Everybody born in Adam receives the penalty, whether they were under the law, whether they were not under the law, they receive the same penalty. So here it is, where by the trespass of the one man, death reigned through that one man. How much more will they receive, those who receive God's abundant provision of grace and the gift of righteousness reign in life through the one man, Jesus Christ. Now, really, I want to focus on the negative first. There's going to be time when we turn the corner, we're going to focus on the positive. But right now, I want to only focus on the negative results of what happened in Adam for all of us. Now, Christ didn't come along, Jesus Christ didn't come along until over 2,000 years ago. So we know that he wasn't around when Adam was there, although God knew he would be. He's the lamb slain from the foundation of the world. We know that. But these results continue to exist in Adam for every single person born in Adam. And this is what God is trying to tell us. He's trying to tell us his view. So by the trespass of one man, his one sin, death. Now, what is death? We said it is physical death. It is first spiritual death. He says, in the day that you eat the fruit, you will surely die. So that death came the moment Adam and the woman ate the fruit. They knew things were different. They hid from God and so forth. They made fig leaves. They did things that helps us understand that very day that they sinned, that Adam sinned, these consequences were leveled upon them. But then 900 and some years later, Adam physically died. We get this in Genesis. So we know that the death that he's referring to is twofold. It's spiritual death and physical death. Why do we say spiritual death, right? So Ephesians chapter 2, as for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins in which you used to live when you followed. So the death there, he's not in the graveyard talking to people who are dead. He's saying that the death here is spiritual death. Of course, people are going to die physically. Yes, we know that. But spiritual death is important. It separates us from God. Death is a separation, and that's how we have to see it. Let's go back to where we were in Romans. Let's get to it. So that was 5:17. One trespass. Here, death is in control. Spiritual death. Now, we could see physical death, but people don't necessarily see spiritual death. They think they're okay with God. They're okay. But no, that's not the case. They're separated from God. We're born in a state of separation and death reigning over us. What's death? Spiritual death with its resulting physical death. It's all going to happen. Everybody who is on this earth, who is ever born on this earth, dies. That includes us. We haven't died yet. If you're listening to me, you haven't died physically yet, but you definitely died spiritually. That's every single person that was ever born. They have already died spiritually at birth, and they will die physically if they haven't already. So death reigned. Let's go to 18. Consequently, just as one trespass. Who's the one do I have to keep asking this? I don't think so. Just as one trespass resulted in condemnation for all people. Wow, this is a big one. So because of what Adam did, you might say, well, okay, well, Adam, you really messed things up there, but maybe he's condemned, but I get my own shot at this once, I come along. No, God says, when Adam committed that sin, a trespass, condemnation for all his race, everybody born in Adam. Now, what is condemnation? This is God's judgment. Why would God make this judgment? Because from his righteous standard, man has fallen. When he says man, he's talking about Adam and all that would be born in Adam. They have fallen. They had not matched that standard, so God must judge, and he does. He judges. His judgment is condemnation for all born. Now, so there's no salvation within Adam, because the verdict of God is already there for us. We are all born condemned. So when are we condemned? At birth. When was Adam condemned? The moment he ate the fruit, he was condemned. It was the judgment of God to condemn Adam and all of his progeny. So that there it is. That's 18. One trespass, not when you come along and you first sin and you decide, well, I think I'll sin. No, this happened before you were even born. God leveled this condemnation on all of Adam's descendants, all of them. And when you were born, you were condemned. Before you even sinned a personal sin, condemned. And let's see, there's another clear result of this. Now, of course, I'm not trying to say we're all in such dire straits, because God has a solution to all of this. But we need to understand what it is that's causing us to be lost in the first place. Why does God not like us? Condemnation is God's judgment on the human race. Condemn. I understood that. 19. But just as through the disobedience of the one man, there we go again with this one man. So Adam is responsible for our separation. We're born separated from God. We're born not understanding who God is. And as a result of that, God condemned us. He says, well, you don't match my righteous standards, so I'm going to have to condemn you. Not only you, Adam, but everybody who would ever be born in you. And then this third thing says, through the disobedience of the one man, again, the many were made sinners. Now, made means constituted. Sinners means the fact that the rebelliousness that Adam had when he lifted up his fist and he said, God, I'm going to do it. I know I'm not supposed to do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That spirit of rebellion is now what we call the sin nature. And this sinful tendency is now in all of us. We develop, or what we say is inherit, the sin nature from Adam. So from the one disobedience of the one man, the many were made sinners, constituted sinners. And that is, we are sinners by nature. That goes back to where we just saw in Ephesians chapter 2, where it says, as for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world and the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who was now at work in those who are disobedient. Here it is. All of us also lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature. There it is. We were by nature. So we were sinners by nature, deserving of wrath, right? We were condemned. But it goes on to say, but because of his grace. So again, God he's telling us this so we don't overestimate who we are in Adam. We need to know who we are so that we don't bring our works, or we don't bring or think that somehow we have circumvented these processes. Another quick thought is, so just to summarize here, these three things, right? Spiritual death, which is resulting physical death. One trespass resulted in God's judgment, which is condemnation. Just through the disobedience of the one man, and many were made sinners. So all of that is so. And what did the law do? The law was brought in so that the trespass, all those things that we just talked about, might increase. But when sin increased, obviously God fixed. Increase means we would be able to see it. We would be able to see sin in all of its horror and ugliness. We can now, God sees it, but he wants us to see it as well. But it doesn't mean that our personal sins are the result. How do we get in this situation? Adam, by the one man. And there's some more scriptures here to think about. So we need to take a frank look at God's view of us in Adam. I'm going to look at it from Romans 3:9-12. Let's go back to Romans 3:9-12. Here we go. What should we conclude then? Do we have any advantage? Not at all. Now, when we say we, Paul is saying we Jews, right? So there's a distinction between Jews and Gentiles, but does it matter when it comes to this? No, not at all. For we have already made the charge, Jews and Gentiles alike are under the power of sin. So power of sin means the power of the sin nature. So let's keep going. He tells us some things about ourselves and this is not our view. If you ask me, Doug, what do you think? I would say, I don't think you're bad. I don't think you're, well, it doesn't matter what I think about myself or what you think about yourself. It matters what God thinks about us. Here it is, as it is written, meaning, and it's already in the Old Testament as well as in the New, and it's true. There is no one righteous, not even one. So from Adam, none of us, there is no righteousness that anybody in the whole of Adam can produce that will get God's approval, that God would say, that's a righteous act. That's a righteous thing you've done. We have no righteousness. As a result of the sin nature, which is nothing but rebelliousness toward God, none of us are righteous. There is no one who understands. There is no one who seeks God. All have turned away. They have together become worthless. There is no one who does good, not even one. So when God is talking about fixing this thing, there are no exceptions to anyone. You cannot get out of this. This is who you are. Now, if you say, well, I don't think so. Maybe that's other people, but that's not me. Well, I'm telling you what God thinks about you. This happens for all of us because of the sinful nature that we inherited from our first parent, Adam. What God thinks, their throats are open graves, their tongues practice deceit, the poison of vipers is on their lips, their mouths are full of cursing and bitterness, their feet are swift to shed blood, ruin and misery mark their ways, and the way of peace they do not know. There is no fear of God before their eyes. None righteous, not even one. Now, for the Jew who had the law, they thought, well, we can keep the law and God will like us. No, you have to come through the door of salvation. And if you're going to come through that door, first you must recognize it doesn't matter whether you're Jew or Gentile. It just says these are the things that God needs for you if you're going to be saved. So there is none. So we need that frank look. And what we should realize is God's righteousness drives the whole process from the bad news all the way to the good news. So we need righteousness. We're dead. We are condemned. And we have a sin nature. God has to correct all of those things. And we have personal sins on top of all of those things. God has to correct all of those things before anybody can be saved. And he does through what we call the good news. So rejecting the bad news is bad, but accepting the good news is good. The good news is why it's called good, because it fixes the bad news. If the good news that you believe does not fix the bad news, then it's really not good news at all. So these are important things. These are foundational things that we have. And I hope everybody will begin to orient and look at themselves from the standpoint of bad news, good news, because that is the foundation. That's where we came from. That is what God is fixing when he gives us salvation by grace. We're going to talk more about it. Obviously, we're not going to forget it. It is going to be something we trust. Either you believe these things or you don't. If you don't, it won't be good consequences. You'll probably try to present your righteousness before God. You'll probably think that somehow because you were Jew, born, with the genes of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that you can skirt all of this. No, you cannot. This is for every person in Adam. We're going to come back and talk more about this as we continue our journey and reasoning. Let's continue next time.